First week Blu-ray numbers for Alita Battle Angel are starting to trickle in, with Alita blowing away the competition as the top-selling Blu-ray and continues to sell well on digital. While a whole new round of articles about Rosa Salazar desiring an Alita sequel and the fact that we haven't heard anything yet about the sequel's surface, continuing buzz for a potential sequel, while John Campea has a video asking if an Alita sequel is in doubt. No, it's not in doubt. He just misinterpreted Rosa's comments. But he does bring up one good point, that no news is probably good news.
But I would suggest this. No news right now about Alita Battle Angel might actually be good news. Because we've heard, Rob, of a couple of Fox projects that after the merger, Disney axed. We have not heard that Alita's got the axe.
In this video, I run the Alita market share numbers compared to other Blu-rays, trying to develop an estimate of how many units Alita actually sold in its first week. Warning, there will be math. The doctor is in. What's up guys, Doc Ito here with an Alita update. Remember to like and subscribe to the channel and hit the bell so you don't miss any of Doc Ito's favorite pairs as we continue to do Blu-ray analysis once we get hard data. Remember to sign the sequel petition if you haven't. We're almost at 60,000 votes and moving up steadily. And buy those Blu-rays, baby, at the link below. Not only is Philip counting on us, Rosa Salazar is too.
Hi, Alita Army. What's up, guys? Buy those Blu-rays, baby!
And Rosa's interview about Alita Battle Angel and her desire to continue to make movies in the Alita franchise keeps getting traction, with Gizmodo reporting she wants to play Alita for literally the rest of her life, saying, frankly, I think we should let her. We agree. While the Gizmodo interview didn't necessarily have any new info, it did get a whole bunch of views, and continues to keep the buzz up for Alita, getting more people to watch the movie, increasing the odds of a sequel. Cinema Blend picks up the story, talking about how there's plenty of fans of Alita, and that, due to the crazy merger, there's no surprise an Alita 2 has not been greenlit yet. And we get a nice shout out to Alita Army and all the Alita supporters on social media pushing the movie and spreading the word, which will get more people to watch the movie on Blu-ray and digital, increasing revenues. And I'm not going to read all these articles, but there were more websites picking up the similar stories about how Rosa wants to play Alita forever, and that the fact that there is no sequel announced yet is not a surprise for her, given the upheaval with the merger. And John Campea, as I showed briefly, similarly argues that after the merger, there's been several movies that have been canceled by Disney, so the fact that we haven't heard anything negative about Alita is a positive thing. However, while that's true, I would also argue that they're not going to announce no sequel right now because there's an incentive for them to get people to watch the movie, to see it, to buy the Blu-ray and the digital. So if they were to say no sequel right now, it really would not be a wise thing because less people would be interested in seeing the movie. But I think they're still waiting to see what's going to happen. If those Blu-ray sales are blown out of the park, I think we're looking at an Alita sequel. So it's up to us to continue to support the movie, to get more people to watch it on digital, to rent, telling people, friends, and so forth about it. But doing it all in a positive light, because we do not stand by in the presence of evil. On iTunes, Alita was number 3 this past week, which is actually great considering that it's been out for quite some time. Endgame and Longshot were the only movies above it, with Detective Pikachu, Creed, Captain Marvel, and so on below. I am surprised Shazam isn't even on this list. So the fact that Alita continues to maintain on digital on iTunes is very encouraging. A little less encouraging was that the movie has fallen out of the top spot in the UK, with Dumbo flying to number 1 and Captain Marvel jumping up as well. Alita fell from number 1 to actually number 4, with even Shazam above it. However, this was new on disc. So it'll be interesting to see if Alita can go back up, because I would have expected it to stay number 1 or number 2 with Dumbo coming out, but for it to fall to number 4 is a little disheartening. However, it seems that in the UK, Alita wasn't necessarily as strong as in other markets. As we can see in the US, it's still number 3 on digital. And we know that we need as much revenue as possible for Alita. Scott Mendelson mentions Alita in his latest article about Disney, talking about how Dark Phoenix was doomed from the start, but that Alita was a slight overperformer at $405 million on a $170 million budget. Other than Alita, most of Fox's movies have stumbled or bombed. And while, quote, Disney may or may not be evil, they are not stupid. If movies like Tomorrowland or McFarlane USA made money, Disney would still make them. Alongside the Marvel flicks, the Pixar toons, and those live-action remakes that have, at least on film Twitter, come to represent everything wrong with modern cinema. But overall, I think it is a sad development, and Scott agrees too, saying he hates to see what's happened to Fox and what it means for the movie industry. When Fox, just looking at 5 years ago, was making hits like Gone Girl, Planet of the Apes, X-Men Days of Future Past, Birdman, and so on. Because if Disney has their way and they're ruled by the bottom line, that's really unfortunate. We need movies that take risks, that innovate, rather than just the same old thing that is going to bring people into the theaters. But the bottom line does matter in the world that we live in, so let's try to figure out exactly what Alita is doing while we wait for the actual numbers for the Blu-ray to come out, since the numbers website is usually a few weeks behind, publishing the July 7th data, meaning we're going to have to wait a few weeks until we get any actual data on Alita. However, Blu-ray.com did say Alita outraced all other titles in its first week, which is really not a surprise, since most movies, big movies when they come out, end up grabbing the #1 spot. They say the film did better overseas, and overall Alita had a very strong Blu-ray market share of 82% in its first week, which is a little bit strange way to denote it since these numbers don't actually add up to 100%. But in any event, Alita did pretty darn well, finishing #1, as well as #1 on 4K UHD. MediaPlay News reported some more numbers looking at the top 20 selling Blu-rays for the week of July 27th, with these numbers where Alita got 100 being a comparison of units sold compared to the #1 title, meaning that Alita was new, was #1, Hellboy was #2 and only sold 44% of Alita's numbers, and Shazam was #3 at 35% of Alita in its second week in theaters. And then a big drop-off at Breakthrough, Captain Marvel, Missing Link, between 6 to 8% of Alita's numbers. So it's very hard for us to determine how many units Alita actually sold, but we can try to figure it out. Looking at Captain Marvel, 8% of Alita's sales, and Dumbo at 6.5% of Alita's sales. Because the numbers is reporting Dumbo's sales figures and Captain Marvel's sales figures from July 7th. This would be about 3 weeks ago. So what I did is I took a bunch of movies, the top movies of this year and some of those from last, looking at Captain Marvel sales weekly, Aquaman, Bohemian Rhapsody, Spider-Verse, Fantastic Beasts, and so on, graphing the Blu-ray sales by week, and then comparing them to try to determine where Captain Marvel would actually be 7 weeks into its run. So Captain Marvel, to recap, had about 900,000 units sold in its first week, which is similar to Aquaman's 1.1 million and Bohemian Rhapsody's 1.1 million, but much higher than Spider-Man's 530,000 or Fantastic Beasts' 500,000. When you graph these movies, you can see most of the sales are actually in the first week, with each movie having a massive drop off the second week and then essentially bottoming out. Captain Marvel in this dark blue line, we only have data for the first 4 weeks, so we have to extrapolate what things would look like at week 7, with the closest comparison here being Aquaman and Bohemian Rhapsody, with Aquaman in week 7 having about 64,000 units sold, and Bohemian Rhapsody having a much bigger fall off at about 20,000 units sold in week 7. Spider-Verse had about 15,000 units sold, and about 17,000 for Fantastic Beasts. So I think a safe estimate for Captain Marvel is anywhere between 20 to 60,000, with about 40,000 being a safe estimate. Again, this is an estimate. So if we take that estimate of 40,000 and divide it by 0.0812%, it should give us an approximate number of where ballpark Alita is, which gives us a number of right around 500,000 units. It's very hard to make these estimates based on these small numbers. If we take something like 20,000, that only puts it as 250,000 units. And if we take the higher end of 60,000, it would give us something like 750,000 units. So it could be somewhere in that range, but the comparison isn't quite perfect because MediaPlay News reports it at the end of July 27th, which is a Saturday. However, the numbers reports numbers through Sunday, so it is possible this is going to be a little bit off. If we do a similar analysis with Dumbo, the movie started out with just 325,000, and we've got 2 weeks of values, 325 and 125, and it's in the 5th week right now. Fantastic Beasts started at a similar level, a little bit higher at 480,000. In its 5th week, it had a random bump to 130,000, I'm not sure why, but it was tracking around 30 to 40,000 units the weeks around that. And Spider-Verse, again, it started higher, but it was around 60, 80, except for this bump around that time. So with the movie being 125,000 on July 7th, we could be looking at something around 30,000 units in its 5th week. So if we do the same type of math, 30,000 units divided by 0.06543%, that would again put us around 500,000 or so in sales. So how does that compare to other movies that started out similarly? And of course, these numbers aren't perfect because These estimates go through Saturday, however the numbers typically estimates through Sunday, so we're going to be underestimating what Alita is actually doing. But if we take a movie like Bumblebee, it started out with 440,000 in its first week and ended up making around 30 million at the home video market. A respectable amount, however I think Alita needs to do a little bit better. I would be hoping for a number of around 50 million in the US market for domestic home sales. Fantastic Beasts started at a similar number and gained about 43 million in the home video market. Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, similar numbers to start, making around 43 million. Ralph Breaks the Internet, 500,000 to start, 33 million gross. So my estimates for Alita are actually a little higher than that. I would anticipate Alita Battle Angel sold around 500,000 to 600,000 Blu-ray units in the first week, putting it slightly below a movie like Captain Marvel. However, it could be on the higher end of these estimates, especially with the passionate fan base and all the other versions selling out. And if we get anywhere close to the million unit mark, I think we're in very good shape for a potential sequel, because typically movies, when they start about 1 million units in their first week, 1 million Blu-ray units, end up right around 50 million or more in sales, which would be fantastic. And of course, we're going to be monitoring these numbers. I think 500,000 is a reasonable number, 750,000 is a good number, and 1 million is fantastic. These numbers, I think, indicate we're around the 500,000 mark, but we're going to have to wait a couple weeks to see for sure. So we'll continue to monitor the sales numbers and any data we can find. Y'all have a great day. We'll keep you updated. God bless. We'll talk to you soon. Doc out.